So, for those of you who may not know, it's Mother's Day, and I want to honor all those men, women, and other individuals on the spectrum who have served in nurturing or loving or supportive or leadership roles in anyone's lives. If it's been an hour or a lifetime, it it doesn't matter. We've mothered many people over our lives, and I want to honor you on this Mother's Day and all the other 365 days of the year, whether or not you are called mom.
Hmm.
Joe, could you put up the screensaver again? This is
Sure.
my outline. Okay, this is part of the outline for my talk. The top left one is really just because we've been talking about gently sweeping dirt from the least favorite part of ourselves. My husband's an archaeologist, so I'm probably the only person here that's married to an archaeologist, maybe. I'm very often the only person in the room who's married to an archaeologist. People always come up to me and say, "Ooh, that must be so interesting." And I said, "It is not. It everything he deals with is already dead. You, no drama there. The drama is with the living people who are fighting over the dead." But actually, Ben is not in the picture. Ben is doing the work of unpacking things like we do. We dust away or sweep away dust from our roles or our true self. And it's called, some people call it shadow work. Ben is the shadow in the picture taking the picture. So I thought that would be a good start. Other pictures that you're going to see are a ripple of a pebble. That's going to represent the poem A Pebble Thrown into a Still Pond by Joe Zarantinello. I also am referring heavily to the Book of Joy, which is written by the Dalai Lama about a several-day meeting that he and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu had in 2015. And on the right, you'll see images of interconnectedness, which is a theme throughout this talk. Now, I've written this talk about 50 times, so I'm not sure which parts of it you're going to get, but I hope it must be the right part for today. Okay, Joe, you can take down the screensaver. Thank you. So here's just an excerpt from Joe's poem, A Pebble Thrown into a Still Pond. And I want you to think about this as we talk today, but also in your own life. The spiritual journey of total transformation is not logical or linear, it's chiastic. Chiastic movement is not bound by laws of time and space, it is radial. It radiates like the ripples that flow out in all directions from a pebble thrown into a still pond. And later he ends the poem, what is the pebble thrown into the still pond of your heart? Find out, for heaven's sake, find out by feeling the faintest ripple in the stillness. When I was preparing for this talk, I wondered what ripples and pebbles have embraced me in my pond and how many of those ripples might have reached others. And I was thinking about our interconnectedness across, oceans, Vivian, and lands and lakes and continents, but we are still together. We're still interconnected. And I also thought of the many times we've practiced Tonglen for people we've never met. Whether it's people that have died of COVID, people whose lives are affected by COVID, people who are in Gaza, Israelis, Palestinians. We have prayed for people we have never met before, but we are connected to. So I've got a few select stories from my life. I've made them really short. Each one of them could be half an hour or 45 minutes if you get me on a good day, but I really narrowed them down. One pebble moment for me was when my husband's mother died, exactly 2 weeks after we got married. Now, those of you who met me 3 weeks ago may know that I was going home to celebrate my wedding anniversary. Well, the 29th anniversary of Eleanor's death was earlier this week. It was exactly 2 weeks afterwards. And for some reason, the manual that usually comes to the United States Post Office about how to be a newlywed and how to deal with life's tragedies had not made it to my mailbox by the time she died. So I did not know how to manage grief and be a grieving daughter-in-law when I was 15 days married. So I called my priest. That was back in the days when people called people. And he gave me the most valuable advice. He said that my job was to hold Ben's hand and go where he goes. And when it was my turn, he would come with me where I went. And we were just soldered together. And that's what we do. We don't necessarily look at each other, but we hold hands and we go to the next place. We go where the place takes us. We may not like the place, but that's where we go. So that also has an impact on my family who wasn't born at that time. A few years ago, my daughter Sarah had her college roommate come visit us. Her roommate's name is Jordan. And it was during spring break, so we had all three girls home. My daughter Emily was here, my daughter Sarah was here, and Jordan was here. And we were all watching movies. And for some reason, Jordan starts talking to me. She says, I just came out to my mother. I said I was a lesbian, and I always knew I was a lesbian. And my mother said she was going to pray the gay out of me and made me leave the house and won't let me come back. I didn't know what to do with all this. I mean, she went on for minutes. So I went upstairs and thought, what am I going to do with this child who is bereft, crying in my house? And I wrote her a note card. I did that on purpose because I wanted her to remember it. And I wasn't sure if I spoke to her, if she'd remember. I wrote down everything that I wanted to tell her if she was my own child, that I wanted her to remember that she was loved no matter what, that I would be her mother figure in that area of her life. And her mother had a lot of value, but maybe not in that part of her life. And I was not rejecting her. And if she ever had a wedding with another woman and she wanted a maternal figure, I would happily come and I would happily step aside if her mother decided to take that role back. So I gave her that card. Remember, she's sitting on the sofa with my daughters, and I go back upstairs. 3 minutes later, my daughter runs upstairs. What did you say to Jordan? I said, well, that's between the two of us. She is crying. I don't know what to do with her. I said, let her cry. So it turns out that it became quite a drama on the sofa, and Jordan shared the card with both my daughters and has written me several times over her life to thank me for that, and we're still in contact. But the point was, I thought I was done. I thought I just needed to support Jordan until she didn't feel like she needed supporting. So that was a ripple that happened in her life that went out, but it came back to me. 3 years later, my eldest daughter, Emily, who was on the couch, came out to me and my husband and said, well, I have these feelings that are different from what the society expects of a heterosexual person. And I know that you and Dad are going to be okay with it because I saw how you handled Jordan. And I was stunned. All those things came back to me. That for me is amazing how the ripples came back. Very often the pebbles we throw, the ripples go out, but we don't necessarily know that they come back to us. So I was just in awe that something small that I did for a child in my house ended up coming back to me, and that she had a positive experience. And that whole coming out process for her ended up being 10 minutes. And then we started talking about what flavor of cookies we wanted to eat. That's much different than, I'm going to pray the gay out of you. You have to leave this house. Just, do you want macadamia nut or chocolate chip? Very, very different. So that's an unusual story about the ripples coming back. I want to move on a little bit to something amazing that's happened in the past 4 years. It's been this group. I had never heard of any ideas of having a true self that wasn't greatly impacted by what somebody else said or what somebody else thought or how somebody else treated you, but that you would have a true self that noticed the clouds that went over your head, but you're still right there. I was exceptionally good at becoming the cloud, embodying the storm, becoming the thunder, the rain, and the lightning, and passing it on to everybody else. I'm really good at that. But I'd never heard of this other, it's just a storm. It's not who you are. So I've been trying to practice more of that. And I have, just a lot of work to do, but I have unraveled a couple things. I've still got 1 million left, but I got time. And sometimes when I unravel one, it ends up unraveling another. And I want to connect that with a book I've been reading. The Book of Joy was a book written by the Archbishop and, a ghostwriter. By the Dalai Lama and a ghostwriter about a visit that the Archbishop had with them in 2015 in India. Now, Joe recommended this book, and all I'm thinking is, I grew up in North Carolina. My great aunt was sick. We watched the televangelists on TV, and they would fight and caterwaul each other for who had the best donations, who had the loudest voice, who had the best microphone. And I thought, this book is just going to be an argument about Buddhism and Christianity, and I'm not sure I want to get involved in that, but okay, I'll do it. And I was wondering if they would argue about which religion was the most true or compete for who was the most pious. And they didn't. They had so much vulnerability and generosity and wisdom that they wanted to share. And one of the things that stuck out for me was the start of their relationship. The Archbishop, and by the way, I actually met him. I went to the University of the South, which is an Episcopal school. So I tended to know more about Episcopal things than other traditions. So I knew kind of what was happening with him. He came to Sewanee and got a honorary doctorate, and I shook his hand. He would, well, of course he's dead now, but he wouldn't remember me from Eve. But I can honestly say I shook his hand. He was a powerful man. But he said, I don't think you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to become a close friend of the Dalai Lama today. We had a communication of the heart. And when we kept quiet, our hearts discovered that they were kindred spirits. That was so powerful. It wasn't their words that connected them. It was their spirits. They found love for each other in their silence. They didn't connect what they had in common in their backgrounds, in their occupations, in the same social clubs they had. They didn't connect through the silence that they may have had from avoidance or fear, but in the silence of love and peace and acceptance. And that's where they found their love. And I think that's where we find our love in this group too. They didn't try to best each other. They didn't try to say who is more pious. They even each celebrated or officiated at a ceremony that was the most important in their religious tradition. And the other person very, very respectfully participated, not watched, but participated. Each one participated in the other. And they may have explained it as it was going, but it was quite beautiful. And they shared a blessing in their presence with each other and in the words that they had between each other. And we do the same. That's exactly what we do here. So part of this discussion, and I've got this written out because I'm going to quote what they said, and I don't believe in just making it up. They were asked what could change the world, and they both said compassion. And my thought is, what is a better way to teach compassion than to live it? It's not really an educational topic that you can write on it, but that's not the learning. So what the Dalai Lama said is, our society is lacking an adequate sense of compassion, a sense of kindness, and genuine regard for others' well-being. No religion can be universal, and these values are universal. We must teach our youth the source of happiness and satisfaction, that the ultimate source of happiness is within themselves, not in machinery or technology or money or power. Part of our process is to help spread the message that love, kindness, and affection are the source of joy and happiness. And the Archbishop added, help me to spread the love and laughter and joy and compassion to the world. And then you will discover joy. Joy, what you had not thought of, comes as the gift, as a reward for this non-self, regarding caring for others. It's a wonderful book. I'm not doing any justice to it. In the back of the book, there's several ideas of how to cultivate joy. Two of them are really simple. Reaching out to people. There may be a lonely person and you may not even know it, but just reaching out and just having a small conversation. It could be about a rose in the garden or just anything that could help alleviate loneliness, because you already have in common the bond of humanity. And sometimes just smiling and acknowledging another person is a gift. You're improving the quality of human interaction, and they labeled that as a gift of spiritual giving. But those very, very small things could have ripple effects to others, or certainly maybe have the potential to reduce some of the negative impact that we might have on others. We receive our blessing in between our stories, in the presence between others, in the listening, in the giving, and in our sharing. So I want to tell you one more really, really short story that in which this group plays a part in. One day recently, I went to the grocery store. I was kind of worried about work. I knew I had to get home, because if I didn't get home, I couldn't put my feet up and take off my shoes, which is my favorite thing to do. And here I was in a grocery store with shoes and standing up. So I just went off, got my things, got back in the car, and then I thought, wait a minute. What did I just give to everybody? I was completely closed off. I didn't want to interact with anybody, and guess what? Nobody interacted with me. I was kind of angry and ready for something else and really unapproachable. And I thought about us in our squares. And I said, my newer understanding of our humanity and our interconnectedness is not resonating with my actions in the grocery store. That's the same behavior and mindset that I've had for years. And it's very effective because I get to go do something else. But it's no interconnection. It was transactional and not interconnected. I was still living in my storm and my sun was eclipsed. Well, I'm going to fight that right away. So I put my groceries in the car and I went back in the store. And this time I made eye contact with anybody who was willing to make eye contact with me. I smiled. I commented on the kind of bananas that I liked, suggested that the grapes were good, but I didn't like the cotton candy ones. But it didn't matter what I said. It was just something, a way to have a communication and move on. Other people just plain smiled at me. My favorite time was at the cash register, because then the little guys that bag everything, they told me all about themselves. I don't think anybody asked them about themselves ever, because they had so much to say and they really liked talking. And then my spirits were lifted and they weren't even down, and their spirits were lifted. And I thought, wow, that's interconnection. They may not remember my name. They may not remember me ever, but maybe I just erased that negative part of me that had just been in the store 5 minutes ago. Maybe that made an impact, and maybe they won't be so down on their jobs when they get home. I realized that I was connected to them, they were connected to me, and I was communicating from my heart to theirs. So I want to give you a charge. After our recessional, when you guys press the leave meeting button, take the gifts and the presents, PRESENCE, that you have received here, and spread it out in the world. I love that we have it here, but if each one of us spreads out in the world, even just to one or two people, who knows how the world might change. Here ends the lesson.